So tonight we're going to talk about cerebral palsy, speech, language, and feeding difficulties. So a little bit about myself, but I feel like I said most of it. I graduated from Neiman College with my undergraduate degree in 2014. I attended Columbia University in 2016. I've been practicing for 6 years now. I'm a school-based SLP. I worked with children with a variety of disorders from preschool to high school. I have to say my favorite population is high school. I just love it. Some people look at me when I say high school, they're like, really? But yeah, that's one of my favorite populations. Currently, I work with seventh graders with language disorders in a charter school in the Bronx. I was born and raised in the Bronx, so I'm a New York girl. I love it. I currently live in Yonkers, and one of my most favorite things to do if I'm not reading up on things pertaining to speech is read, just books in general, write poetry, and play video games. I wanted to become an SOP because I wanted to give back to the ably different community because I am a person who lives with cerebral palsy. So I just wanted to give back and show kids that no matter what difficulties you have, you can overcome them and you could be great. So that was like my motivation for that. All right, so the agenda for tonight is we're going to talk about what cerebral palsy is, what causes it, and the different types of CP, speech difficulties for someone with CP, language difficulties, feeding difficulties, and other interesting facts. And then Lauren's going to talk more about what her life is like living with CP. And then I'll open up the floor for questions. So cerebral palsy is a neurological disorder where a part of the brain called the cerebrum is damaged. The cerebrum controls vision, motor skills, cognitive abilities, perception, and your hearing through the 5 lobes. I know this is really sciencey, but we have that background. So the 5 lobes are the temporal, parietal, occipital, and the frontal lobe. Any damage to one or all of these lobes can cause cerebral palsy. What causes cerebral palsy? Cerebral palsy is caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain that occurred at birth or while the child was still in the womb. Cerebral palsy usually occurs in premature babies and has many different degrees of severity from mild to severe. So the types, there's spastic, there's atoid, which we call floppy CP. So that's just the inability to control your muscle movements. So the movements seem floppy and uncoordinated. Then there's ataxic, which affects your balance and coordination. And within those 3 different types, there's also a different types based on like which extremities are affected. So you can have diplegia, which only your lower extremities are affected, hemiplegia, which one side of your body is affected, or quadplegia, which your whole body is affected. I myself have my quad, but because I had so much therapy throughout the years, they probably now would classify me as a diplegic because really I'm able to use my upper body. It's just my lower part that I'm not able to use. So here's pictures of all the different types. Here's a child on the left side with atoid quadriplegia CP. Here's a child in the middle with spastic CP and a person with ataxic on the right. So some speech difficulties for someone with CP, the most common is dysarthria, which is a motor speech disorder where the muscles of the mouth are affected. Among the different types, there are different speech difficulties. So you can have spastic, which is slow, imprecise oral movements that take a lot of effort. Speech sounds or the vocal quality is tight and hoarse. So I have a little voice clip so you can hear it. Hold on 1 second. Hopefully it plays.
So my parents talk about finding out in a very abrupt way and just essentially being told by the doctors that they shouldn't have very many expectations for what we would grow to do in life. And we all.
So if you can hear that tight hoarseness, I sometimes even do it myself. It's most of the time when you get fatigued, when you're really, really tired and you just can't get that breathy support up. That's when I find that I do it a lot, when I'm really exhausted. Atoid, you have difficulty controlling the face and the tongue muscles. So with the vocal cords and the speech is breathy, I'm sorry, and slurred.
When I was a student, I'd write long essays that I'd work on for days, but now I'm ready.
Yay!
What do you think? Good to go?
That's cool. Cool.
Angela, what do you want to tell the world?
When you you time.
So if you can hear that breathy quality and she's not able to control those muscle movements, that's atoid. Hold on a second. And ataxic just has that monotone voice and it has a lot of pauses and accelerations in between. So I'm going to play a voice clip here.
My motor nerves, all of it seems to have been, I think, about whatever I have.
And how long has this been going on?
For about a year, continuously.
So if you can hear that monotone quality, it kind of sounds robotic and strained. So that's with Altoid as well. I'm sorry, ataxic as well. You can also have children or adults who are nonverbal and need that AAC device to communicate. So you can see that as well. And like some of the main speech difficulties are articulation or that breathiness. We really have to work on those diaphragm muscles to get that speech out to make sure we have the best quality. So that's what I really focus on with remediation as well.
Julia.
Some of the language difficulties.
Julia.
Some of the language difficulties is that people with CP have cognitive deficits. So like they have trouble with attention, memory, auditory processing, or just overall processing in general. They can have a learning or intellectual disability. It can be expressive or receptive language disorder. People with CP can have any of the above language difficulties, but not necessarily. It depends on which part of the brain was damaged, and if they had seizures over time, that may also occur with them. Some of the feeding difficulties, the most common, dysphagia, or more specifically, neurogenic dysphagia. So neurogenic dysphagia is when you have swallowing difficulties due to a change in the central or peripheral nervous system. So you can have difficulties at any stage of swallowing, the oral, pharyngeal, esophageal phases. Sometimes you'll see lack of bolus control. Also, it can affect chewing due to the structural changes. The laryngeal elevation reflex, that can be delayed. The biggest thing is aspiration. So sometimes when that laryngeal doesn't elevate in time, you could get the food that passes down and you could get aspiration pneumonia. It happens, what I'm finding out is that it also happens in adulthood as well. There isn't a lot of information on what happens to adults with CP, so I'm kind of learning as I go. Being an adult myself, of like what some difficulties you can see down the line, because I'm actually experiencing something right now where my pharynx closes at night when I go to sleep. So I'm only breathing at 70% when I sleep. But that's because when I go to sleep, all my muscles relax. So it causes that closure, which I end up snoring at night, but I have my adenoids and tonsils removed. So it's just something that I'm learning that I actually had to stay with the ENT. I was with an ENT when I was younger, but because I had got over the GI reflux and all that other stuff, my mom felt I didn't need it anymore. But come to find out, I still need to be followed up by an ENT doctor. You can have voice changes, so that wet voice when there's food that actually passes through, right? But you don't have that full aspiration. So the mucus is covered over the vocal folds. You get the primitive reflexes like the tongue thrust. I still have that. The tonic bite, where you just bite down so hard, or the open mouth posture, where they're not able to close their lips enough to chew. So you'll have that open mouth posture and the bolus food will, slip right out the mouth. So other interesting facts about cerebral palsy is we still have sensitive hearing. I like to say all the time I have dog hearing because I can listen to the TV at like level 17 volume and it still sounds like it's at level 30 for me. So that's when we still have those startle reflexes and the sound is amplified in our ears. So we'll jump at the smallest sound we hear because just for us, it sounds louder. We get that hip subluxation, which the hip bone comes out of the hip socket. I promise you, it is not painful because when you have spastic CP, those muscles hold that bone in kind of place, so you never feel the pain. So I still have to be followed by an orthopedic just to make sure everything is in alignment. Teeth have a hard time falling out due to the tight muscles. Again, this isn't like everyone, this is specifically for people who have spastic CP. So you won't see like all of these difficulties in everyone. You will see like teeth having a hard time fall out mostly with people with spastic CP. Many people with cerebral palsy have neuromuscular scoliosis. So there's two different types. It's idiopathic, which we can all get, and then there's the neuromuscular that people with CP get, and that's just because the tight back muscles are pulling the spine out of alignment, so you get that curve. And it generally looks more like a C curve instead of an S curve. Some other interesting facts. You can have post-impairment syndrome. So that occurs in adults with CP where it's extreme fatigue. And it occurs because everything that we do requires a lot of energy. We use 3 to 5 times more energy to do anything. So just me speaking, I'm expelling way more energy than you would to do the task. So that sometimes gives us extreme fatigue. There is some evidence that CP affects the autonomic nervous system, where you can have a fast or low heart rate or high or low blood pressure, and there's breathing difficulties, but it's not definitive yet. It's something that they're still looking into. And sensory, sometimes we won't feel the need to eliminate until the very last minute. So that's why they say a lot of times people with cerebral palsy are incontinent, but you can be toilet trained. It just, you have to put them like on a different type of schedule. And now I'll send the floor over to Lauren. Lauren, you still there? Oh, there we go.
Hello. Alright, I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
And so, like I said before, my name is Lauren, and can you see me?
A little bit, Lauren. Back up a little, or put the computer down. You put the screen down or back up. Yeah, there you go.
Alright. So, I have cerebral palsy, quadriplegia, which means that all 4 of my limbs are affected, and I also have dysarthria to have speech impediment, and since I was little, I received tremendous amount of therapy, like speech, PT, OT, but ever since like I got into my adult years, the insurance, the insurance companies don't want to cover therapy sessions. So ever since I turned 18, ever since I turned 21, I haven't received therapy. And being that I haven't received therapy, I feel like over time my body has gotten worse because like very tired really fast. And also, my arm, if you can see in my picture, my arms are very contracted. So I used to be able to do a lot for myself independently, like feeding myself, using my hands to like work the computer and stuff like that. But as I got older, it can become very difficult. But so like every day I try to like do a little exercise on my own for myself, since I can't professionally get the therapy that I need, and I also have 24-hour home care services. So, my aides also try to help me do stuff that I need. I also have siblings that's very, reliable and there for me. Wherever I need them to be. Throughout my life, I had several surgeries. I had leg surgeries to release, my hamstrings and to make my legs a little loose. I also had scoliosis surgery because I had a C curve to my back, which means that my spine is crooked. So what they do, they put screws or rods in your back to make it straight. So now I'm able to sit up straight and have good posture. Like Latavia said before, like sometimes cerebral palsy it gives you a fast heart rate, so sometimes my heart rate go a little up. But it's because, with my disability, I use a lot of energy to do stuff. So, it tends to get a little frustrating. But, I try to live my life to the best of my ability. And, like I said before, I was able to attend college. I did work in college, but I never worked outside of college yet. But hopefully soon I will accomplish that. But for now, I enjoy doing modeling very much. And yeah, so that's a little about me.
Thanks, Lauren. I really appreciate it and appreciate all your help. I definitely wanted, people to see all sides. So you definitely gave me
Yeah.
that.